Hello everyone, thanks for joining Maximum Wealth today. My name is Doug. Today we're going to have a conversation with Barry James Dyke. He is the best-selling author of two books, Pirates of Manhattan as well as Guaranteed Income. We're going to be discussing private equity and its takeovers of privately owned businesses and what effects that has on that business going forward. We learned a lot and we hope you do too. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Everyone, this is the Maximum Wealth Show. I appreciate you joining us today. We have a special guest. His name is Barry James Dyke. Barry has been in the financial services business, Barry, what now? Nearly four decades?
Long time, Doug, something like that, close to that. Yeah, roughly, yeah, almost, 38, 39 years. I know it seems like yesterday.
I met Barry a few years ago. We were on a committee together and felt like I had met somebody famous. I had heard about him for a long time and looked forward to meeting him. Finally got to meet him and very honored and blessed to have him on the show today. You have owned a pension consulting firm in the past.
Yep.
You have a third party or had a third party administrative benefits company.
Yep.
And then in 2001, I think you started Castle Asset Management.
Yeah. I set up my registered investment advisory firm in 2001, and I still have that today. And I do work with people all around the country. So it would, and so that's that's kind of what I've done. And as you know, I've written 3 books, and the Pirates of Manhattan in 2007 released, and then and then I wrote the Pirates of Manhattan 2, Highway to Serfdom in 2012, and then I wrote the last book, Guaranteed Income, in 2015, where Dave Walker did the foreword, a friend of mine.
Sure.
He was former comptroller general, and I'm in the process of rewriting that book now because to coincide with the release of a documentary movie coming out this fall called The Boomer's Dilemma.
What was the title of that book again? Was what now?
It's going to be Guaranteed Income 2.0. As you know, I've been working on a book on private equity, but with being essentially asked into be part of this movie, I figured time was better spent informing people. So I'm going to be redoing Guaranteed Income. It's going to be Guaranteed Income 2.0.
Okay.
And instead of it being a small little book, it's going to be a little bit bigger, and it is going to be bigger, but it's going to get into how people can plan their retirements better, but also to watch out for all the cliffs and pitfalls which are brought to you by Wall Street and continuing to this day.
Absolutely. Well, you're quoted all over the place. Everybody knows who Barry is in the financial services world. And the documentary, give me the name of that documentary again.
It's going to be, and I only can really say it's tentatively called A Boomer's Dilemma.
Okay.
And and I only can say I can't really get into a lot of it, because it's going to be released. Technically, it's going to be released to the Motion Picture Bureau around September 23rd, and then released online out of in October. It's going to be available to most major platforms on demand and so forth. But I'm going to be in with some of the top economists in the country, Olivia Mitchell and David Babel from Wharton, and Moshe Mavilsky from Canada, and Robert Merton and William Sharp, who both got the Nobel Prize, and Ted Siddell and Ted Benna. I think I introduced you to a friend of mine, the guy who created the 401k.
Yes, sir.
And a lot of other good people, because people don't really know what's going on, Doug.
Sure.
And they continue to be lied to. So I figured I would update this book to help other people.
There was a podcast that you were on that I was listening to a couple of days ago, and you had a couple of quotes in there, Barry, that I was really taken with, and you were very adamant about these quotes. And the first one, I wanted to ask you about those and kind of get you to expand on them just a little bit, because I really liked them a lot. We have to insulate people from this Wall Street cesspool.
I can't say it that's more succinctly. Essentially, what has happened is that we've gotten so far away from the fundamentals, and the funny thing, I was talking to before we got on this podcast this morning to a client of mine's daughter who he's been a client this long now. His daughter's 33 and she has a first child, and
Wow.
and she's blossoming and she's got a great job. Her and her husband have a great future, but all the people now are so brainwashed into the Wall Street casino. Things like mutual funds and index funds and target date funds and all this crap, which is really good for Wall Street and the asset management companies, but really doesn't do that much for regular people. Now,
Right.
I'm not against the market. I believe in investing, but the big gamification of investing, from everything from these target date funds to indexing to Robinhood.
Yeah.
Okay, we can't even get a phone number from Robinhood. It's just insane. So what has happened? But this has pretty much taken over the United States, and so so as a result, our retirement systems. I think I may have told you this, Doug, but I don't know. Do you know, Doug? We're America. We're the greatest in the whole thing. Well, I don't think we're the greatest right now after Afghanistan, but
Right.
where do you think we are in the world tables, Doug, in terms of retirement plan ratings and world league tables in the top 20? Where do you think the old USA is in the top 20?
You would think with the technology, with the money, with Wall Street, you would think within the top 2 or 3.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah.
You would think. We're at 18. We're next to Malaysia. Okay,
Isn't that absolutely amazing? Now, to tell me exactly when we say what the rating is 18 in
and the ranking overall, financial, the integrity, there's a whole bunch of factors which I'll be getting into in the book, and I'll document it. I didn't come up with this methodology. It was actually Mercer Pension Consultants out of Australia each year annually analyzes pension plans throughout the world. But things like solvency, integrity, and robustness, and the whole thing. So
Right.
we're number 18. We're like a third world country at this point, and the whole thing is, and no one's in the media is talking about it. So,
No, I was just going to say no one in the media is talking about it, but then you still have the people that we work with, the consumers out there every day on the street, that are completely oblivious to how bad this system actually is, and they're falling victim to it every day.
yeah, they're brainwashed. And, it's like this young lady, has the whole world ahead of her, and I said, we said, I have this funds and all this stuff, and it's like all this money's locked up in a straitjacket, and she's 33, and she's maximized she's putting in like incredible amount of money into her 401k, and it doesn't have the fundamentals correct.
Wow.
So it's a big educational process, as you know, Doug, but it's very Orwellian, if you will. George Orwell, 1984. So this is what we're seeing with retirement plans. So I don't know. The more I know, the more I don't know. But this is what we're seeing happen today.
Well, and talking about our friend Ted Bennett, in my conversation with him, he was, very, I guess, upset in the thought process about how these funds have been placed in these 401ks, and they're not really the best the best funds, mutual funds, those types of products that are being placed in the 401k. It's actually the more bottom of the barrel funds that no one else wants out on the retail marketplace that are actually being used in the 401ks, because they know that money's going into the 401k regardless from an extraction of people's pay. So they've got funding, but they're using probably some of the worst funds in these 401ks that people are investing in. Does that sound?
Yeah, it's just you kind of temper that, but the whole thing is that, and again, I'm not against the market, but
Right.
When you start looking underneath the hood of where people actually make money, like in the first book, and if people go to barrymajamesdyke.com, they get, the first book, I wrote a chapter, this is like 14, 15 years ago, never met a man who made his millions of mutual funds. I don't know if you have, Doug, I haven't yet found. No. Now, we do have giant mutual fund companies, like I think Invesco, I think is based out of Atlanta down there. Okay, so that's a giant. But the people who run the mutual funds make a fortune.
Mm-hmm.
But so but the whole thing is that, so what has happened is that all the economic responsibility, the stewardship, if you will, is being taken from the employer, being shifted on the employee, and they don't even have a clue what they have.
Right.
So the whole thing is to educate them, and I hope this is why I was talking to you and our good friend James Nethery over there in Texas, as I said, and so I salute Doug what you're doing and really help me to educate people, but people don't have a clue.
I agree. I agree. I've got another quote that I heard from you. I was going to read it to you, get you to expand on that a little bit more, because this was a biggie for me. When you come into retirement to guarantee an income stream for the rest of your life, you have to use annuities or life insurance. That's it.
That's it.
There isn't anything else.
Ain't anything else, okay?
So
Again, okay. People say, oh, I hate annuities. I hate annuities. Well, would you like Social Security? Yeah. Well, guess what that is? It's an annuity. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you like your pension plan? Oh yeah, I got my state pension plan or whatever. Oh, do you know what that is? It's an annuity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, so when, and particularly now, Doug, I've been doing this a lot. I've had some clients when they're 30s, and now they're in like their 80s, or
Right.
when I get them. And when people get older, I mean, they lose their and actually this I'll be addressing this, called cognitive dissonance. So
Okay.
when people like, I'm very sharp right now, but if you look at statistics, when we get in our 70s and 80s,
Yeah.
we start losing it. And I've noticed this with a lot of my own clients who are very, very sharp. They're traders.
Right.
So the whole thing is it's really, when you play the retirement game, you have to play for income. You
Right.
don't have to listen to any of this Wall Street drivel anymore. Okay, you want to use something which is safe and guaranteed, and so we transfer the risk onto an insurance company, which are really the best stewards to manage retirement risk. Always have been, always will be, and it's just because of the nature. When you understand the nature of insurance company, how it's constructed,
Right.
it'll always be better than a mutual fund, which these systematic withdrawals and all. So and all this kind of, a lot of stuff doesn't work.
Yeah. And one of the things that I try to instill in people as well is that the Wall Street firms, those funds that they represent, are really looked at, or I guess regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission, that one entity. Okay.
Yep.
A life insurance company that you were saying that should be used to guarantee that retirement, guarantee that lifetime income, so to speak. They have to register and they have to comply with 50 different states. And so when they have to go to all these different states every year and report to each one of these commissioners, they're actually having to comply with 50 individual regulation or regulators rather than just one, the SEC. Now, I know they have to comply with the SEC as well, but they're being looked at and scrutinized a whole lot more than any of these other investment or Wall Street firms that are out there. I feel like, because their feet are just held to the fire in a lot, so to speak, in a lot more different ways than most of your investment firms, your hedge funds, your private equities, all of these types of things that are out there, which we'll go into later in the conversation. But I just think that life insurance companies are just highly scrutinized as far as their investments and their ways of doing business each year.
Yeah, and they are, as they should be. And the whole thing is that what the financial institutions want to be regulated really at the national level, so they can control this one, the SEC or whatever. And the SEC is kind of a revolving door between business and the securities industry, and it's just a revolving door. So there's really no long-term cops on the beat. There really isn't any. Okay, and so for instance, like the last chairman of the SEC was a guy by the name of Jay Clayton, whatever. He left. He left the SEC, went to work for Apollo Global Management. Who's kind of like it's like asking Lucifer for dinner, you know what I mean? So it's just, but and Apollo owns Athene and life, so it's just so, but you don't have that on at the state level.
Right.
They're putting under a microscope.
Yep.
They're very looked at. They look, not that saying life and companies are the panacea, because they're not. And I'll complain, and you and I will complain about them as much as anybody.
Yeah.
But when you look at the end of the day, they're actually pretty good stewards.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what they have are contracts. They issue contracts, and
Listen, people, yeah.
yeah, and they have in those contracts the way that your money is going to be given back to you in a guaranteed way. So when you're working with the equities or the mutual funds or those types of products, you're not going to get that contract. You're not going to get that guarantee of how that money's coming back to you. Matter of fact, it tells you, I think, at the bottom that these things are not guaranteed, and you could lose this money. And so you don't see that in these contracts with these life insurance carriers. So just going back to what you were saying, there's no other way to guarantee that income, in retirement other than using these life insurance or annuity contracts.
Yeah, there is no other way. It's what it's called, and it's an acronym. I learned it from an actuary friend of mine, Steve Church, who's a great guy. And he said, well, they call it TINA.
TINA.
You know what TINA stands for? There is no alternative. There really isn't when you look at it. And
I got to write that down, even in the middle of the podcast. Here we go, write that down, TINA. I love that.
There is no alternative.
Wow, that's good.
As a matter of fact, there is no alternative. Matter of fact, Wall Street has come on to this. If people don't take my word for it, please go to Alliance for Lifetime Income. I don't know if have you heard of this, Doug?
Yeah, I have heard.
I think we talk about Alliance for Lifetime Income. That's essentially a trade group which spends like $30 million a year to promote annuities for retirement income.
Sure.
As a matter of fact, they're actually the sole sponsor of the Rolling Stones fall 2021 store. So all you Stones fans out there, that's the main sponsor is Alliance for Lifetime Income, which is essentially an annuity lobby.
Okay.
But again, because the Wall Street understands it, the only place really is to go is through annuity. So you're seeing a lot of companies who want to sell things like variable annuities, and go to alliancetimeincome.com. So Wall Street already gets this. Okay, they understand this. They're actually horrible asset managers. They're good at mergers and acquisitions and IPOs and all that stuff. They're actually horrible long-term wealth managers. So there is really no alternative for people, when you think about it. And but that's I hope I answered your question.
You very much did. And I thought those quotes were very spot on, and I'll use those. I obviously use your books and promote your books here, and encourage my clients or prospective clients to read your books, and even go to your website to purchase the additional ones if they want to. Moving along in our conversation here, I wanted to we were going to talk about the new money makers of today, the private equity groups.
Yeah.
The people that are responsible for, I guess, going in, trying to, from the perspective of revamping and making money in a different way with an older company that may or may not be being successful. I think to start off with, can you tell us and help us to understand, because I know a little bit, but not a lot, the difference between a private equity fund and a hedge fund?
Well, essentially, a hedge fund is generally they both come under the same umbrella. I mean, both the hedge funds and private. First of all, they're fairly non-regulated. I think private equity has to register as an investment advisor, but they're really not come to SEC scrutiny per se. Mm-hmm. But a hedge fund is thinking almost like as like a giant mutual fund, makes very high concentrated bets in stocks and distressed debt and that type of thing. And but they're both taxed the same.
Okay.
Whereas a private equity is essentially where some financiers come in, they buy a company, mostly with debt. That's why I call them mercenaries of debt.
Yeah.
And they buy a company, and the whole thing is there is a case to be made for private equity for smaller firms and so forth. I'm not totally against it, but
Sure.
to buy out a family business, that type of thing. And they come in and they buy a company, a general partner, and buy a company generally with a teeny bit of their own money, and they get most of the key investor money, i.e., from like you're in Georgia, from the state of Georgia, like retirement plan, or Florida, or CalPERS, which is kind of a nightmare into itself. Okay, but these are kind of the feeding grounds for private equity. So those are the major investors, and they control maybe about 26% of all assets now within the retirement plans. Right. They go in, they take a teeny bit of their own money, and they get most of their money from like the state of Georgia or the state of New York, whatever. Right. And they buy a company, say for like $1 billion, and they take a company which is generally maybe was 80% equity, or and just equity of the business, and 20% debt, and they flip it around. So now it's 80% debt and 20% equity. Wow. And by the way, the private equity firm only puts down about 1% of their own money. Yeah. But they're getting an investment banking fee to begin with, generally about 1.5%. Then they're getting 2% management fee per year. So right out of the gate, they're making money. And right. If the thing goes bankrupt or goes into default, whatever, they know it's not my money. And so what has happened is this private equity or leveraged buyout firms, which people may have seen the movie Barbarian at the Gates, mm-hmm. or Pretty Woman. That was all about leveraged buyouts. Okay, right. It's gone from like 25 firms in the 80s, Doug, to wow. roughly about 6,600 companies, leveraged buyout companies today. And this is pre-Gin out of London, who monitors the stuff. So you've seen really a pandemic of these firms, and pandemic of greed, if you will. And so it's become giant. Bain & Company just came out with a report a month or so ago that roughly about 4.3 trillion of it's grown about 1.1 trillion of capital is going to be deployed into private equity this year, and this is up from 300 billion in 2010. So it's morphed into this gigantic cancer, if you will. And
well, in looking forward to you and I getting together about this, I did some research and watched some other podcasts or channels on private equity. And it's really quite amazing to me that the people that are out there talking about private equity, because, we've had our conversations about it and what our attitudes are about it. It's a way to make money now, and it's a way to make a lot of money. And these people are promoting it as a great thing to go in and to purchase these companies as 50% or more owner, and then go in and sell these things off, or to break these things apart and sell the pieces off there to be able to turn a profit. But this private equity concept is being used and touted as a great thing online. It's unbelievable at how wonderful they make it sound. There's a book out there. The name of it is More Money Than God. And it's about these families, these rich elite families, getting their kids to go to college to learn how to form private equity funds. And it's just an amazing thing to see what's really going on here, and people not really understanding what this private equity culture is doing to these companies out here.
Yeah, it's sad, and but there's a lot of the good thing is Doug, people, you got to have hope, and there are some people speaking up against this. Because all you're hearing, because the whole media is just totally spun, from Bloomberg, and actually when I'm in this movie, I'm talking about my interview with Bloomberg 10 years ago, so that's another story. But Mike Bloomberg is a billionaire Mike, Mayor Mike. It's he's got Stephen Ratner, who used to run a private equity firm, Quadrangle. But in any event, it's really kind of tragic. And and I've done the research, Doug, and it's I've done the research roughly over the past 20 years. Roughly 300 major corporations. I mean, 300, both in the U.S. and abroad, because you have to look at not just the U.S., but you have to look at the U.K. and France and Germany now, because capital moves all around, and these private equity firms from the U.K. come to invade the U.S. and we go in and we invade Britain like we're doing right now. So you really have to look at it. But I research it, and it's unequivocal. It's beyond the shadow of a doubt that private equity has put roughly about 300 major corporations into bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And people don't know, people know. I said, well, you ever heard of a little company called Chrysler? You ever heard of a company called J. Crew? You ever heard of a company called Neiman Marcus?
Yeah.
You ever heard of the Tribune Publishing, which owns the Chicago Tribune, the Baltimore Sun, or have you heard of iHeartRadio, which is the largest radio? They're all gone into bankruptcy under private equity.
Yeah.
And so this is what's happening now. And so what they're doing now is they're getting, which I think is really, it's I'm no saint, but I think it's a moral issue. The Department of Labor gave the green light to private equity last June, and I've got all the records from the Department of Labor where they give the stamp of approval under private equity. Like, this is the best thing since sliced bread. It's not, that. And you got companies like BlackRock and Fidelity, or Infidelity as I call them. But Vanguard was the one. Jack Bogle must be rolling over in his grave, because Vanguard put its imprimatur on the and said, private equity is why we're behind private equity. Right. And the thing is that it's really but people really don't understand it. And as you know, Pastor Mike, because a lot of advisors, Doug, don't understand it. Would you agree?
I know. I agree. I totally agree. That brings me, I guess, to our case study today. You were naming off those companies, and one that I think is near and dear to people's hearts in this area that I live in Dalton, Georgia, is Belk Corporation. Belk, started in Monroe, North Carolina in 1888. William Henry Belk was the founder. I think it was like a little 1,500 square foot wood frame building that he started Belk in. And then eventually him and his brother was a physician that he talked into becoming a partner. He give up on his medical practice to join him. And he started, it was a lot of new things that he did innovatively with the Belk thing, buy large quantities of goods for less and sell at a lower markup, clearly marked with prices. There was no haggling in the Belk stores. It was, before then, it was like you could go in and kind of negotiate with your pricing when you buy it or whatever. He said, no, this is the price and you're going to pay this. And then this was a new thing that he put together too, was that customers could bring back something if they were not satisfied with it. And so that had never happened before the Belk Corporation came into existence. And so it was innovative. But going forward now, we've got a situation to where they have been struggling from a retail perspective, and in walks a group named Sycamore Partners, I think. And so we've got a long history. Everybody's loved Belks. Probably everybody around here knew someone or had a family member that worked at Belks as an employee. And things are looking grim. What's your take on the Belk situation and Sycamore Partners coming in, taking that over?
Yeah, so this is what happens. This is a classic case of private equity, because a Belk family, I don't know the particulars behind this, but private equity will generally come in. Let's say you have it's been in business. I didn't know until I started researching this, but what do they have, like 300 stores in the South?
300 stores, that's right.
300 stores, and let's see. Anyway, so Sycamore Partners acquired it in December 2015, so roughly 6 years ago, Doug, something like that, thereabouts, 5.5 years ago. It was the nation's largest family-owned and operated department store, headquartered in Charlotte.
Yep.
with 296 stores, and it was covered in a leveraged buyout by Sycamore Partners for about $3 billion. And it was overseen by the Belk family for 127 years, and it was acquired at a family-owned price of like $68 a share. And here's what Stefan Kolozny, okay, who's the private equity guy, said about taking over the company. And this is what he said, and I got it from a press release. It says, we are excited to have completed this acquisition and begin our partnership with Belk. The company has developed a loyal base of over its 127-year history, and we believe the Belk management team and its associates will, as they build on the company's legacy and continue to serve its customers and deliver modern Southern style. And Stefan Kolozny, managing director of Sycamore Partners.
Yeah.
So they came in and so they bought the company and they bought the company for $3 billion, but they used $2 billion in debt. So again, Stefan Kolozny and his little private equity firm come to a teeny little bit of their equity, get most of their equity from, could be the state of Georgia or Tennessee or Florida, whatever. Okay, and this is where they get their money from. And then they bought Belk with $2 billion in debt. And what happened is, you have the pandemic and so forth, and actually, in by end of December, around December last year, so they added 2.4. They bought it with $2 billion in debt, but by December of last year, they had 2.4 billion with a B of debt. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they issued a term loan in December prior for $900 million to finance the leverage buyout. And this is Bloomberg figures. And then they stopped paying the suppliers and swimming in debt. They filed bankruptcy this year, and hoping that they could chop off roughly 450 million of the debt incurred in the leverage buyout. And then so what happens, Doug, is that these companies get strangled with debt costs. So Belk's not alone. So the same thing happened with Toys R Us. The same thing happened in Neiman Marcus. The same thing happened with J. Crew. And so you have these, I call it's like trying to carry a fat man up Mount Everest,
Mm-hmm.
They're weighted down with so much debt. So they imploded.
Yeah.
Now, does this hurt Sycamore Partners at all? No. Will it hurt Belk as a, yeah, will it hurt employees? Yeah. Do people know about this? No.
Yeah.
So this is what, so it's when you Doug, and I know we've been doing planning for people long enough. You put too much debt on a family or an individual or a small, closely held business, eventually we go either into default or into bankruptcy of some sort. Okay.
Right.
What private equity does is they've taken this model and they'll legitimatize it, and they have so many blocker corporations that even if the company goes bankrupt, there's no real accountability.
Right.
And this is and it's not a Republican or a Democratic issue. I'm a political atheist at this point. It's all at the greed of the trough. Okay. It's a revolving door. Democrats, Republicans, all into private equity, and no one's really talking about it.
Let me ask this question. In my studying the private equity industry, it's really about, obviously it's about making money. That's what it's
exactly
all about. Okay.
That's all but the tax benefits, which we should talk about.
Correct. Yeah.
The whole model, Doug, is it's subsidized by the taxpayer because using all the debt.
Yeah.
And as you know, in businesses, that any debt used to purchase a business or real estate or whatever, all interest is deductible. So they're driving an 18-wheeler through that.
Yeah.
Okay. They're actually they're getting their income converted into capital gains.
Okay.
Because they're getting a portion of the profit sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And then also sometimes they're actually even dumping their pension obligations onto the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, right, which they have done, which will be in the book. And no one's talking about it.
With the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, they're only going to give the employees what, 30 to 40% on the dollar of what they actually had in their pension plan?
It depends. Now there's in the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, which covers It's actually a government agency, it's an insurance agency, really funded by premiums.
Right.
I know what the maximum is now, like $56,000-$60,000 a year now.
Okay.
But if you look at some of the crap that's gone on right now, that a lot of these companies have gone into the pension benefit guarantee corporation, like Lehman Brothers. But I didn't know, Doug, but they're actually, what they engineering is that they're also entitled to what's called the healthcare tax credit. I don't know if you're HCTC. Have you ever heard of that one, Doug?
I have heard of that, but I am not familiar with it.
This is unbelievable. So, so a lot of these companies which have gone bankrupt, like Lehman Brothers, who was really part of the whole leverage buyout stuff, they went into bankruptcy in 2008. They dumped the pension benefits onto the pension benefit guarantee corporation. Then they also get a healthcare tax credit of 72.5% of their health premiums, which were paid by the government, either as a tax credit or directly to the carrier.
Wow.
So yeah. So one of the benefits in researching this stuff and doing this work is I got to know a guy by the name of Jeremy Gould. People don't believe me, Google him. He was one of the top Wall Street. He was an actuary, and he told me a lot of the stuff about how dumping Wall Street learned how to dump plans onto weaker hands, and this is what's happening going with private equity. So, in any event, so this is what's going on. So, and the irony of the whole thing is actually being funded by public pension money, with CalPERS and California being the biggest.
Tell me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is that a lot of times these private equity companies create these funds to go in and do this with these companies, go in and buy these companies out. They don't really care if the companies make it or not. They want it to happen for a while to give an appearance, but really they're just after the management fees. The amount of money we're talking about is so large and so great in these buyouts that these 2%, 3% management fees is really all these people are looking for, whether the company survives or not. They're going to get their money out of the deal.
Well, they want that, Doug, too, but that's not enough. Well, essentially they get generally 1.5% investment banking fee for putting the deal together of a company they just bought. So the money they put down, they've already gotten out just from the investment banking fee, and then they get 2% management fee. Okay. So it's a win-win, and what they're really going for was called as the profit sharing or the gain, right? And which is treated as capital gains rates. So the way the tax code is rigged, and this has been going on. It was if you really want to point at who was responsible, it was essentially William Jefferson Clinton in 1996, 98. We dropped the capital gains rates down from 28 to 20%, but it was George W. Bush too. Okay. Yeah. In 2003, who dropped the capital gains rates down from 20% to 15%, and this was initiated by his head of economic affairs, Glenn Hubbard, who teaches at Columbia. So ever since 2003, Doug, it's been shoot out the OK Corral. It's been essentially a stampede into private equity, venture capital, real estate, and so on. So they get the profit piece, which they got, is being essentially was been taxed at 15% for years. Now it's gone up to about 20%, but it's still much lower than ordinary income, which would be 40-50%, depending on where you are. Yeah.
I'm going to go back to one of your famous quotes, and it said, you told me that these transactions, it's not about wealth accumulation. It's all about value extraction.
Yeah. And it's sad because in America, we used to build a lot of stuff. And now, the whole, and I was talking to a rabbi about this, he's become a friend out in Chicago. He's a good guy. He's a best-selling author, by the way, Evan Moffat. But it's really got, what we're seeing today, Doug, is wealth extraction. And let's get back to the people who control Belk, okay? Because I like data. I'm a doubting Thomas. Yeah. Don't give me any BS. Give me the facts. All right. Is that fair enough?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we all know about Staples, right? I actually have one when I need stuff. I buy a lot of stuff online now, but when I'm in a pinch and need some stuff, I go to Staples.
Right.
Well, the same people who bankrupted Belk, owns Staples.
Okay.
So just kind of give your listeners kind of a taste. So Staples, it's headquartered in Framingham, Mass, a little bit south of me, in 1986, and in 2017, Staples, which is they employed 60,000 people and had 1,200 retail locations. So the same people, Sycamore Partners, purchased Sycamore. Sycamore purchased Staples and leveraged buyout in 2019 thereabouts. Okay, or 18. Okay, a couple of years. I give the exact history on that. So, but this is what they did because of the deductibility of debt, Doug. And this is people don't. I get all this stuff from Bloomberg and stuff. So, on April 9th, 2019, they completed refinancing $5 billion in debt incurred from leverage buyout, and they extracted an eye-popping $1 billion with a B, folks, $1 billion debt-funded dividend. Unreal. So they ladled,
unreal,
so now Staples interest costs alone. I'm not talking about personnel, land, leases, any of that stuff. The interest costs alone are $130 million a year. A part of this is from a debt-funded dividend of $1 billion, which at Staples, the partners, they get 20% of that, so they get $200 million, which is tax to capital gains rates, and the other $800 million went to their limited partners, which are primarily pension plans. We don't care about them anyhow, Doug, because pension plans are tax-exempt entity. So these are the same people who took over Belk.
Wow. And the consumer has no clue about what's happening to these corporations, their pension plans, their jobs. I don't see this thing decreasing in any way. This is just going to grow. I mean, you said it went from 25 to 6,600 companies that are doing this. Is there any end in sight to something like that?
No. And what's made it worse, Doug, is that because 0% interest rates caused by the Federal Reserve has made this financial promiscuity, if you will, go from promiscuity to an orgy.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
it is what it is.
It is what it is. Okay, I'm not making this up. And by the way, there's some great people who've done a lot of research. Got a PE stakeholder report out of Chicago. Did really good stuff. They did a lot of really concise. And there's another woman, Eileen Applebaum, is a friend. She's a doctor in economics and done a lot of great work on research on this. She's fearless. I love her. But this is the same thing that happened at Sears, by the way. It's not just Belk. It's the same thing that happened at Sears.
Right.
And different variation of the theme, Doug, but it's pretty much the same thing. Buy a company with no money down, or team a little bit of money, use someone else's money, buy the company, strip it and flip it, and sell it to a bigger fool, a greater fool, or bring it public and dump it on retail investors. So it's pretty much the same story over and over and over again, and not just in the US and the UK.
How, if anything, are we venturing into the area of 2007, 2008 with the banking crisis, the derivative issue? Are we venturing into that kind of, I guess, ground where the taxpayers could be responsible for something here coming forward if these things if the economy were to downturn, if issues happen with market? Could this be something that the taxpayers could end up footing the bill for, like they did with the 07, 08 banking and derivative issues?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think they are. I mean, it's I don't like it. If you look at it, there's nothing really in history that looks like this.
Yeah.
Other than the French Revolution, when they sent like 60,000 people to the guillotine or whatever.
Right.
But so it's actually more unstable than it's ever been. And don't expect to get help from the Federal Reserve, which oversees the banking system, because Jay Powell, you know who Jay Powell did in his prior life, becoming chairman of the Federal Reserve?
I did not.
He worked for the Carlyle Group.
Wow.
And he had his own private equity firm.
Wow.
People don't believe me? Google it. Go to Wikipedia. Jerome Powell and
Amazing.
Randall Quarles, one of his top lieutenants, another private equity guy from Carlyle Group. So you have. It's very difficult for the consumer to get this. I mean, I'm just passionate about it.
I understand.
And just because I mean, it's just I'm no saint. Okay, I read the Bible every day because of this stuff. I mean, I don't. I live a pretty simple life, but I think it's really, really important, not just for us, but for our children and grandchildren, and really, because if you study empires, this is. And unfortunately, the fall of Afghanistan really kind of shows you the direction this company is going. And one of the contributing factors for our war efforts and stuff like that was the whole war machine, which private equity has been very much interconnected with.
I pulled some old newspapers out, and this was back to 05, 06, and your friend David Walker was
good man.
Yes, and he was very adamant and very active in trying to help people to understand what this debt situation was looking like and where this thing was going, and he likened it to the Roman Empire, and this was back in 05 and 06, and then we have the issues in 07 and 08 with the banking and the real estate market derivative issues. And there was nothing really done to fix that. It was money thrown at this from the federal government. But my understanding is the housing market is probably in about a 4 times the size debacle today than it was then, just because of the amount of money that has been loaned with the low interest rates, and loaned in situations where people are in positions to not be able to pay that back at some point in time. And so the readings that I have and the articles that I've studied and read about is that this thing was never really repaired from what happened back in 07 and 08. And then you have the private equity issues on top of this coming forward. It's really a game that people are playing that they really don't know all the rules to.
No, and people don't, and it's it's essentially it's run by the moneyed elites, and when you look underneath the hood, it involves Wall Street, involves Ivy League academia, that's for sure.
Right.
That's where all these guys get their education. And so my whole thing is that one of the biggest issues today, this is just my opinion, is it's not this. My biggest issue is economic inequality, and today it's worse than it was in 1929 prior to the crash. So at least back then people didn't have the debt that they have now, but now, so if you really look at the big issue, just in my opinion, is not this ESG and Black Lives Matter. Not this stuff is not important, because it is, okay, but really the big issue is economic inequality. And because I even have some Black friends, I think we have a mutual friend out there in Chicago that we both know, Gary, very successful guy.
Sure, absolutely.
A very top shelf advisor, man. He's very good, very successful, and I we'll talk about inequality, but he agrees. He says we don't have we have economic inequality, and that's really, and it's not just Black, but it's the white people and everybody. It's and the system is really rigged for the elites, and that's private equity is kind of one of the big. It's got all the blessings, and people don't know what's going on.
That's right. Well, and I think too that what's missing in that equation with all of the social inequality and the Black Lives Matter, the different things, the social movements that are going on out there, I really feel like that there needs to be that big word that I don't think anybody's bringing into it, which is called responsibility. And you can
throw money at these things. You can pass laws, you can change laws, you can tear statutes down, you can do a lot of different things. But I still feel like that there has to be a degree of responsibility taken by those that are maybe victimized by this, those that are actually funding these things, that are, responsible for some of these things happening. Responsibility needs to be taken by everyone involved in all this stuff, whether it's, financial inequality or social inequality, whatever it is. Responsibility seems to be thrown out the door with it. And that's what bothers me more than anything else, is that we're getting away from being responsible here.
Yeah, and integrity, and this is the whole thing. This is how I get to know about when I looked at things like life insurance products and insurance products. Okay, I said, "Oh my God, these are contracts," and they says we promise to pay,
right,
regardless of what happens,
right,
and and I've sold everything. Believe me, in the '80s, I sold limited partnerships, and which are kind of today's the private equity firm, which they are, because it's up by the and I have a joke which I'll tell you, which you'll get a kick out of. And but when you understand this structurally, I'm an engineer, and I'm a very anal guy. Me, I like my big, nice German cars. It's just I like them, because they're very well made, and that's why I like, if you understand insurance products, I like something which has integrity.
Absolutely.
Okay, and so I like something you can throw a hammer at all day, which won't break, which you can do with a good annuity or life product. I'm not against it, but this is so. But because it's they're a contract, it's promised to pay. If you read your arbitration agreement with your brokerage statement, okay, you're going to have a heart attack, because it says essentially you agree to arbitration. If you want to sue us, you have to go through arbitration. You have to go to our office at our convenience. All right.
Yeah.
But so that's what's going on right now, and with insurance products, and so they regulate you, and I'm a registered investment advisor, so I have to open up my Komodo and in my office and essentially see everything.
Yeah.
But a lot of these other companies, with private equity firms and hedge funds and what have you, they're non-regulated entities.
Well, I really don't understand how do they sleep at night? How do people live with themselves, knowing that something that they're doing is damaging another person to be able to get what they want? And to me, we should be on a mission here. And if you and I are doing business together, and if it's not good for you and it's not good for me, it shouldn't be being done. But I know, the world doesn't work that way. But there should be a conscience involved with some of these people. But I don't know that it's actually out there in the business world. And I think, is to some degree it is, but I think it's losing its luster and value a whole lot, as far as having that conscience and treating neighbors the way you would want to be treated, or doing unto others the way you would want to be treated. That's being thrown out the door now in this society we live in.
Yeah, and I'll give you a great example. And let's get back to that Staples. I go into Staples, and and they've actually they brought some kind of cool stuff into the thing. But I remember talking to this woman. I've seen her. And I says, "How's it work? How's it like? What's it like working for Sycamore Partners now?" She broke down in tears. She says, "You know about that?" I said, "Oh yeah, I do." I said, "I write about this stuff." She says, and she was like in tears. She says, I'm 67 years old, and they cut me back from like 40 hours a week to 20 hours a week. So now I got to get health care here, and I'm cut back my hours." And she was in tears.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, and I'm saying, for Sycamore, it's rapacious greed. It just extracted a $1 billion debt funded dividend. And so it's the same thing with Belk. But
yeah, it's the same thing with Belk. They pulled a big dividend out of Belk. I read.
Did they? Yeah. So that could be. So I think they did when they took it over the company. So last time they took it over, they may have taken like 300 million out or whatever. I couldn't. I'm not exactly. You may know more about than I do.
I think they got all their money, the actual money that they put in, they extracted that out immediately. So they got paid up front for what they had invested, for that little bit that they had invested, they pull that back out immediately.
But now, as you know, Doug, too, the danger of this is these clowns who are doing this stuff and now getting really into the safe money life insurance space,
Scary.
which is
Scary.
which is bad.
Yeah.
But there are, but they need to speak to Bill you because, there are some good companies, which both you and I are associated with. There are some good ones left, mutual companies left, and some good publicly traded companies left. But you really do have to have a good picker and know what you're looking at.
Well, it kind of goes back, like you talked earlier about reading the Bible every day. Go to Hosea 4:6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Yeah. And then the second part of that is because they have rejected knowledge. And so, you can, not to be an evangelist here, but at the same time, there's some truths in there and principles in there that affect our lives on a daily basis. And if we ignore it, we're going to continue to fall victim to it until we realize it and say, we need to be paying attention to what's going on around us.
Yeah, because you look at it, make a historical perspective. Everyone, when Hitler, rose, I used to say, I did read that book. Who was that? That book you sent me about the guy,
Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Yeah. But I was just, I said, duh, you got me that one. But so, yeah, because no one spoke up about Hitler or whatever.
No, this guy did, and it was not a good ending for him, but he did have the courage to do that.
He had the guts to talk. He didn't end up well, and then unfortunately, if you ever read 1984, did you ever read 1984? Like
1984
or Animal Farm? A lot of the stuff which he wrote about, Orwell wrote about.
Yeah.
The group think, and it's really
well, the TVs up in the homes with the smart
they can see everything anywhere with our smartphones.
They're doing it. They hear everything we say. It's kind of a crazy thing that we're living in, and yeah, I think 1984 is here. It
is here. So, but there are a lot of good things. But one of the things, there is hope. The great hope is there's internet, so we can talk about stuff like this.
Right.
There's a lot of good websites people can get good information from.
Right.
There's a lot of good people who really are talking about this stuff, and because people know they know something's going wrong. So I think if we insulate them, we have them more dependent, upon God or whatever, and really get away from the group think.
Absolutely.
But this, we're essentially in the media, but as is one of the things which everyone says how bad annuities insurance are, Doug. But in the book, which I'll be revealing to people, that all these media companies, who haven't given me the time of day, actually have bought annuities themselves for their own term.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're doing it themselves. It's kind of like with banks telling you to put your money into CDs and money market accounts. None of those guys are putting money into CDs and money market accounts.
Yes, it's the same thing with the media. It's like with like the New York Times, and I know reports of the Times and the Journal and Bloomberg, and some are really good. They're really good people.
Sure.
But they don't know any about this stuff.
No, it's amazing. Barry, thank you so much. I know you're a busy man, and I appreciate you spending this time today. Is there anything that you want to express about these private equity funds or groups that you feel like that was not said that we need to maybe say to the folks out there that will help them, give them an understanding, or just to start researching and looking into what these things are doing to be aware of?
Yeah, don't take my word for it, first of all.
Yeah.
Do your own homework, okay? Talk to guys like Doug. Go to my website, buy my books, barrymajamesdyke.com.
Yep.
You go to Barry James Dyke. You can sign up for, because I've done videos and things. And I've also had the Economic Warrior channel. I've interviewed some of the great economists like Noam Chomsky and Paul Craig Roberts and a lot of really good, outstanding people on this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and do your research, and and put away your smartphone and read some books, read history.
Good.
As Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
Yeah, that's really the only predictor of the future is the history, is to go back and look at that history. And because we really don't change that much as far as humans go. We're all still made out of the same stuff that we were made out of many years ago. And we do repeat our actions quite regularly.
Yeah. So something like one of these, I don't know if you've seen these tools, Doug, which have been brought by Wall Street, these SPACs, these blind pool investment companies, which have soared when private equity has really participated in a big way.
Sure.
So they're called SPACs, or special purpose acquisition companies today. This is no different than the blind pool money in the 1920s.
Wow.
It's no different. So it's just repackaged.
Yeah. Renamed.
Same wine, new bottle. And so read history, listen to people like Doug, pray, stay out of debt, save, get hard assets.
Buy life
insurance, get off the grid.
Insurance, buy annuities.
Yeah. Get off the grid, invest in yourself.
Absolutely.
Stocks fine. I mean, but if you're going to buy stocks, do your research.
That's right. Yeah. Got a little quote here. Never finish your education. Always be learning. Always be learning. Barry, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you again. We'll do this again sometime. I always learn from you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. God bless.
Have a great day. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining Maximum Wealth today. Let us know if you have any comments or questions concerning private equity and its takeover of private businesses. Thank you.